This is not a formal lecture or a complete discussion on configurations, but I want to make this a commentary as a sort of response to some of my students who may not be doing something wrong, but in my opinion, there are things that you can do to kind of make things a little simpler or a little foolproof. And this would include some misconceptions in my views. So first, how about the CIP? If you're watching this and you've already practiced this a bit, you would know that following the Can-Ingold Prelog rules would mean finding the first atom attached, which I kind of made it clear by using squiggles, and then the one with a higher atomic number will have a higher priority, right? And one misconception I think just a few students still bring, although they're usually told this already, that they think the one that wins is always the larger one, especially in the first pair right here. Like they're asked, hey, what is higher priority, the methyl or the ethyl? And they'll be like, oh, for sure it's the ethyl because it's the larger one. But now that idea is challenged once we have this pair below because we're now asked which would win, the one at the left or at the one at the right. And this time it's gonna be at the right because once you compare, right, carbon is the first atom here, but for here it's oxygen. Then clearly the oxygen one would be of higher atomic number. So it's not just about the size per se. It can just be a consequence of the size, but not entirely the size. So for example, let's go back on top, carbon versus carbon. And we know that this is a tiebreaker, right? And so what we need to do is to move next. And when I say move next, I think this is the point where a few students kind of like become careless or they don't care about what was just said. Because if you say move to the next, remember we already have one bond to carbon. If you know your basics, carbon has 4 bonds total. So if we already gave one of them to carbon, how many else are we missing? 3 more. And so here we kind of do this accounting of some sort where we need to account or write those three next things. For this carbon, it would be these three H's, right? Because when you expand CH3, it's CHHH. So that would be, no, we can write that here. HHH. But then, how about this? How will this look like expanded? CH2 is literally 2 hydrogens single bonded, and then CH3. We only care about the carbon here. We don't care about this anymore. So it's HHC. And clearly, it's still a tie for this one and for this one. But finally, hydrogen loses to carbon. And that's the reason why ethyl won out. It's not automatically because it's larger. You need to still do this kind of mental exercise. And it might seem unnecessary, but this is very important once we reach examples like this and this. Let's try this one. So here, clearly, we have again carbon tied with this carbon, so we need a tiebreaker. So what are, again, the next three things attached? In this case, it would be C, H2, and then everything else, right? C, H, whatever. We only care about this. So HHC. So HHC. But for this one, if you expand this, it would be like C and then H and then double bond C. But now, how would you interpret this? You interpret a double bond to a single carbon as if that's a single bond to two different carbons. Although I hope this has been taught already to many of you watching, so it would be HCC. And as you can see here, one carbon versus two carbons, this one wins out. Now, this one is a little more challenging because not only because it's three, but because there's a double tiebreaker here. Let me demonstrate that. So here I have carbon, carbon, carbon. So it's clear that all of them are tied at first. And especially this time, it's skeletal. So I think some students are being thrown off just because it's condensed or skeletal. But you need to go beyond that. If you need to expand it, so be it, right? So if I expand this carbon, it's attached to one other carbon, but it's also with two invisible hydrogens. So that's HHC, HHC. Unfortunately, for this carbon, it's also the same case. C, and then there are two hidden hydrogens. Though for the third one, it's different because I have now here two carbons and one hydrogen. So at least we do have one winner here because these are tied, but this one wins or is better than both of them. So this would probably be rank number one, right? But now, which of the remaining two would be higher and which would be lower? Well, you have to go to another tiebreaker. So unfortunately, you need to move to the next, which is this carbon versus this carbon. And for this one, I can see that it has one carbon next to it, but also, once again, two hydrogens that are invisible because that's a total of 4 bonds, right? So HHC. This is the second one. I'm color coding it already. And then for this one, CCH. And I think finally we have a winner. One C, two C's. So even if it took a double tiebreaker, this one would be number two. And then this would be the loser among the three. Okay. Now, how about this? I can totally imagine some getting confused just because these are oxygens in different functional groups. But, why not just look at the first atom first, right? Carbon, oxygen, carbon, carbon. Hey, there's one with oxygen, so that's automatically number one. But now you move forward. How do you expand COCH3? C, double bond O, CH3. So that would be O, O, C. Let me write that again. O, O, C. CHO, hopefully you are aware, is the shortcut of an aldehyde. So that would be C double bond OH. So that would be O, O, H. O, O, H. And alcohol, it's easy to expand this C, H2, OH. So that would be H, H, O. H, H, O. And I can see here, one oxygen versus two of them. This one is the loser, right? It's the least ranked, number 4. But now, which will win? OOC or OOH? Of course, C is higher than H, so this one would be number 2. And this one would be number 3. So I think when it comes to CIP, being careless and rushing through things is not an option unless you really don't care about getting the correct answer. Okay, but of course, we want to get the correct answer. Now, another interesting discovery I found out just recently with some of my students in the actual university classes I hold is that there's a new technique other than just for RNS, just spinning it would normally be fine, right? But now I kind of learned that depending on where number 4 is, because we know number 4 should always be at the back, right? There are some extra techniques. For example, if number 4 is at the front, it's in the wedged line, you can just do the spin as usual. In this case, this is clockwise, so that's R. But if it's wedged, you invert it at the end, so it's actually S. But if number 4 is in the plane, like the flat line right here, you need to first do some kind of swap with the one at the back. So that would be 4 here and 3 would be here. And then you make your spin first, in this case clockwise, so that's R. And then you invert it at the end, just like the one below. So it's still going to be S. And I find it fascinating because, hey, we're getting consistent answers. That's nice. I think having multiple ways of solving something is great. But in my opinion, the backlash you can get from that is, what if I tell you that there are ways of drawing chiral compounds where you have a double wedge with no flat line or a double flat line with no wedge? And what's funny is that, in fairness, that swap or double swap will still work, but it will feel like you expended too much effort getting to the same answer. Unlike if we go with the old school, and I know people have strayed away from just the idea of spinning this thing because it's hard to imagine. But I don't know. My comment is, don't you think the idea of like swapping this and then inverting it at the end is like also extra mental load? So this is where things become opinionated, because in my opinion, I don't like to have to memorize a different thing if 4 is at the front or if it's 4 is at the plane. I'm just gonna go with the old school. Like, imagine this is a tripod. These are the 3 feet, and just moving the stand so that these 3 feet will kind of move. Some kind of triple rotation or triple swap, if you will. Or even if I use currently, I can just look at my hand. I'm moving my right hand, my left hand. It's like my thumb is here, and then my index finger is here. You can try doing it with your own hand, by the way, as you watch, and then the middle finger is at the back. And I can imagine like these two, your thumb and your index finger, are these things at the front, and your middle finger is at the back. And then you can just spin your hand like so, right? Okay, so I don't know. And it's gonna give you consistent answers anyway. So for example, I have here 2. I'm just gonna copy the numbers, by the way. So I have 2, 4, 1, 3. Well, if my goal is to put number 4 at the back, why not just move this number 2 and then, move all of these 3? So 4 goes here, 3 goes here, 1 goes here, right? You just rotated it. And then let me just organize it a bit. And look at your rotation. It's counterclockwise, so you'll get S. Or how about doing this? So we have 2, 3, 4, 1. I can just move this such that 4 goes here, but 4 will go here, 1 here, and 3 here. So it would be this, this, this. And guess what? It's the same drawing as the one above. It's also counterclockwise, so it's S. So I didn't need to care about whether it's at the wedge or it's flat. I just spun it. And again, it's my style. You don't need to follow that, but I objectively think it's simpler to remember the rules, I mean. And what if I try to do this? So 2, 1, 4, 3. And I can just imagine putting 4 here would move these 3 here and 1 here, right? So just spin that. Spin, spin. And you still get counterclockwise. So it's gonna end up the same is. And then one more time. So I have here for this one 2, 4, 3, 1. So I can imagine putting this here and then all of them will move like that. So 4 goes at the back, 1 goes here, 3 goes here. By the way, this is 1. And it's still counterclockwise. So see, it's kind of the same idea. In fact, I would want to say that if you're creative enough, you can just imagine that you're just spinning these 3 feet really slowly. And I do have a version of that here. You can pause the video if you want, but note that all of these are the same thing. And I'm just, as I go from left to right, I'm just spinning it. For example, I'm not gonna do it for all of them, but look at number 4. 4 starts out at somewhere at the right side, and then it's currently moving to the front, and then even further to the front. It's now at the left front. It's now at the left, not anymore at the front, and then it's the back, right? You can imagine it's kind of like moving in this direction. And then the same goes with 1 and 3. So suit yourself. And right, the good thing with knowing just how to imagine rotating it, you don't need to care about the way they draw it. You'll just end up the same or with the same answer. Now, the weakness of this is we assume that the 4 is one of the 3 feet of the tripod. What if number 4 is the stand? Like so. By the way, this is a different compound already. Well, you must be imaginative to find a way to put this at the back. And you know what? I can imagine 2 things here, or 2 ways. First, I can imagine using this as the pivot and then spinning these 3. Or I can also imagine using number 1 instead and then spinning these 3. Let's do that. So let me first use number 2 as the pivot. So the COOH is there, number 4 is on top, 3 is at the back, 1 at the front. So moving this would move 4 here, 3 here, and 1 here. So again, 4 here, 3 here, 1 here. And what do I get? That's a clockwise rotation, so that is R. And let's try doing that with 1 as the pivot, or as like the thing you're rotating. So 1 would be this. 2, 3, 4. So if I try to use this and I rotate this, I'll rotate it this way, right? So 4 goes at the back, 3 moves to the right, and 2 moves on top. And look, what rotation is that? Still clockwise, so it's still R. So again, right? I mean, here, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna swap it? I haven't tried, but maybe since it's a planar line, you can do the double swap that they do. It probably getting you the same answer, but why not just imagine rotating it with while holding something? I mean, again, I wouldn't defend my method, the old school method, as the better thing, because I don't believe the older things are always better, but I think this is one of the cases where I could make a case for it. But really, that's my commentary.